Are you wondering whether now is the right time to buy gold, or if you should wait for a pullback or consolidation? Many investors spend hours trying to time the market, hoping to enter at the perfect moment. But here's the hard truth. Timing the market is almost impossible, and trying to do it can seriously hurt your long-term returns. If you want to protect your wealth and benefit from gold's historic performance, there's one strategy that stands out: buy and hold. Welcome to Gold Silver Scope, where we make complex gold and silver concepts simple and actionable. When investors ask whether they should wait for a better entry, they often overlook a bigger question. What happens if you are not in the market? Being out of the market might feel safe in the short term. It gives you optionality, the flexibility to use cash for personal needs or to avoid short-term losses. That feels like a benefit, right? But the cost of sitting on the sidelines is much more significant than most people realize. Over time, the days you miss while trying to avoid price drops are often the very days that determine gold's long-term growth. Consider this. If you held gold continuously from 1970 to today, you would have earned an average of around 9% per year compounded. That's an impressive return sustained over more than 50 years. But here's where it gets interesting. Gold's long-term return is almost entirely driven by a small number of its best-performing days each year. In fact, studies show that just the top 2 days each year over this 56-year period account for nearly all of gold's gains. Now, imagine you tried to time the market and miss those key days. If you miss the best single day every year, your return would drop from 9% to about 3.94% per year. That's almost exactly in line with inflation, CPI, which means your money barely grew in real terms. Miss the top 2 days each year, and your gains essentially vanish. Your $35 investment back then would barely be worth $38 today. Missing more days actually puts you in negative territory. This clearly shows the hidden cost of trying to avoid short-term volatility. You risk missing the days that matter most for building wealth. Gold's daily movements are small but consistent. On average, gold gains around 2.4 basis points per day, and these daily gains compound over time to produce that 9% annual growth. But the key takeaway is simple. You cannot predict which days will be the biggest gainers. They could come early, late, or even consecutively with the worst days of the year. For example, historical data shows that sometimes the best day and worst day of gold occur back-to-back. In 2014, gold's worst day on November 28th was immediately followed by its best day on December 1st. No investor could have predicted that with certainty. This illustrates a powerful lesson for anyone holding gold or silver. Volatility is part of the game. The ups and downs are unavoidable, but they do not diminish long-term gains. They enable them. If you try to jump in and out to avoid losses, you may accidentally skip the very days that drive growth. That's why a simple, disciplined approach, buy and hold, often outperforms any attempt at timing the market. Continuing from our first part, let's look closer at why buying and holding gold is so powerful and why trying to time the market is risky. Over 56 years of gold price history, the majority of returns come from just a few critical days each year. These are the days when gold sees its biggest jumps, sometimes up 5% or more in a single day. The problem is, you cannot know in advance which days these will be. Even if you carefully track the market or wait for a dip, there is no guarantee you will catch these high return days. Historical data proves this clearly. For instance, if an investor tried to avoid losses by staying out of gold on volatile days, they would repeatedly miss the market's top performance days. The result? Their annual return drops dramatically, sometimes down to near zero or even negative territory. In other words, trying to avoid short-term risk often increases long-term risk. Let's put this into perspective. If you invested in gold in 1970 and stayed fully invested, your returns would compound to about 9.1% per year. But if you miss just the single best day every year, your return drops to 3.94% per year, barely above inflation. Miss the top 2 days, and your total gain is almost zero. Your original investment hardly grows at all. Miss more, and you are actually losing purchasing power. This simple math demonstrates the importance of staying invested consistently rather than chasing market timing strategies. Volatility is often seen as a negative, but it is essential for gold's long-term growth. The ups and downs, the dramatic swings, are not anomalies. They are part of the system that allows gold to outperform other assets over decades. For example, historical examples show that gold's biggest up day and biggest down day often occur in close proximity, sometimes even on consecutive trading days. This makes timing nearly impossible. Consider 2000 as an example. The best day for gold was on a Friday, February 4th, with almost a 10% increase. Shortly after, gold experienced its worst day. Even experienced investors could not have predicted this. Similarly, in 2026, the early months alone saw gold's largest down day, immediately followed by one of the largest up days. These patterns show how unpredictable the market can be in the short term. This is exactly why trying to enter the market after a big drop or waiting for a perfect pullback is a risky game. You could miss the very days that contribute most to gold's long-term performance. The reality is that the best strategy is simple: hold your position. By remaining invested throughout the year, you automatically capture the days that matter most, without trying to predict them. Another key point is the clustering of volatility. Historical data over 56 years shows that in 10 out of those 56 years, gold's biggest up and down days occurred within a single week. That's 5 times more likely than random chance. This means the market often delivers its largest gains and losses close together, making short-term predictions unreliable. Attempting to avoid volatility or jump in and out will likely leave you missing the top performance days. Gold's behavior teaches an important lesson for all investors. Short-term price movements are mostly noise. The real opportunity lies in staying invested over the long term. If your goal is to grow wealth reliably, buy and hold is not just the easiest strategy, it's the most effective. You do not need to guess when the next spike will occur, you just need to be present for it. Now, let's dive deeper into the real numbers and historical examples to show why buy and hold gold outperforms attempts at timing the market. Over more than 50 years, gold has consistently rewarded patient investors who stayed invested, even through volatile periods. The key reason is simple. Gold's total return comes from a small number of extraordinary days each year, the days when the price jumps sharply. Miss those days, and your gains shrink dramatically. For instance, if you had invested $35 per ounce of gold in 1970 and held it continuously, your investment would have compounded at roughly 9.1% per year. That's an amazing long-term performance. But what if you miss just one of the best days each year? Your return would drop to 3.94% per year, which is nearly equal to inflation, meaning your money's purchasing power hardly grows. Miss the top 2 days every year, and your returns would almost disappear. Your $35 investment would only grow to around $38 over 56 years. Missing more top-performing days actually results in negative returns over time. Why does this happen? It's because gold gains steadily over time, but most of the growth is concentrated in a few key days. These days are unpredictable, and they often occur during or right after major price drops. For example, in 2014, the worst day for gold was November 28th. Just 2 trading days later, on December 1st, gold recorded its best day of the year. No one could have predicted that. Similarly, in 2000, gold's best day was February 4th, up almost 10%, immediately followed by a significant down day. Even with careful observation, investors cannot know in advance which day will be the top performer. This pattern repeats itself across decades. Gold's biggest up days and down days are often clustered together. In fact, over 56 years, there are at least 10 years where gold's largest gain and largest loss occurred within a single week, far more than random chance would suggest. What this tells us is that volatility is not a threat. It is part of the process. The ups and downs, the dramatic swings, are what allow gold to generate long-term growth. Trying to avoid these swings by jumping in and out of the market is dangerous. You could avoid losses one day, but then miss the crucial top-performing day that drives your annual returns. Over time, this missed opportunity accumulates, reducing the power of compounding and significantly hurting your wealth. Let's also understand the compounding effect. Gold gains on average about 2.4 basis points per day. And while that seems small, over 56 years, it creates massive growth. The problem is that if you exit the market even occasionally, you interrupt this compounding. Missing the top-performing days erodes the benefit of staying invested. And the longer you sit out, the more you reduce your long-term return. Historical examples make it clear, the market does not reward timing. The best day and worst day of the year are unpredictable, sometimes consecutive, and sometimes only separated by a few trading sessions. No amount of analysis or waiting for a better entry can guarantee that you will capture the days that matter most. Gold's returns are a lesson in patience. Stay invested, and let time and compounding work for you. This also explains why many investors fail to benefit from gold, despite its strong long-term performance. They try to avoid losses, exit the market during dips, or wait for a perfect moment to buy. Unfortunately, by doing so, they often miss the days that drive most of the returns. The key takeaway is simple. The best way to capture gold's full potential is to hold continuously, no matter the short-term swings. Now let's look at some recent and modern examples that clearly show why trying to time gold is risky and why holding long-term is far more effective. Even in 2026, we've already seen dramatic evidence of gold's unpredictable daily swings. For instance, late January saw gold drop almost 9% in a single day, followed immediately by a rise of over 6% on February 2nd. These consecutive swings show that gold's biggest up and down days often cluster together, sometimes even within the same week. No one could have predicted this in advance. This pattern isn't new. It has happened repeatedly over decades. In 1989, gold's largest gain and largest loss were only 2 trading days apart. In 2021, just 3 days separated the top up and down days. Across 56 years of gold trading history, there are at least 10 years where the biggest gain and biggest loss occurred within 1 week. And 2026 might become the 11th year where this clustering happens. The lesson here is clear. Volatility comes in clusters, and trying to jump in and out of the market increases the risk of missing these crucial high-return days. So why does this matter for investors? If you try to wait for a dip or exit after a big drop, you might miss the very days that generate most of gold's long-term return. Historically, just the top 2 days of gold each year account for nearly all its annual performance. Missing them repeatedly, even with the best intentions, means you sacrifice long-term gains for short-term comfort. In some cases, that can reduce a 9% annual gain to nearly zero, leaving your money barely ahead of inflation. This brings us to an important principle. You cannot predict gold's best days. They could come after the biggest losses, back-to-back with the worst day of the year, or at any point during the year. That unpredictability makes market timing almost impossible. Even experienced investors and analysts cannot reliably anticipate these movements. History proves it again and again. Whether it's 2000, 2014, or 2026, gold's biggest up and down days often appear together, separated by days or just a single weekend. The takeaway is simple. If you own gold, the most effective strategy is to stay invested, ignore short-term fluctuations, and let time and compounding do the work. Attempting to exit and re-enter based on daily or weekly price movements will likely reduce your returns, not improve them. Gold's long-term performance is not about avoiding down days. It's about capturing the days that matter most, which are completely unpredictable. For investors, this also highlights a broader lesson about patience and discipline. Many people panic during short-term drops or get tempted by headlines to sell or wait. But the data shows that volatility is part of gold's growth engine, and trying to avoid it often leaves you missing the very opportunities that produce wealth. By holding steadily, you ensure that you are present for the key days that define gold's long-term returns, even if they come immediately after significant losses. In short, gold rewards consistency, patience, and discipline, not guesswork or attempts at timing. The market will always have its ups and downs, but the most reliable path to long-term wealth is to buy, hold, and stay invested. Timing the market introduces unnecessary risk and increases the chances that you will miss gold's top-performing days, the days that drive real wealth creation over decades. As we wrap up this series, the key lesson is clear. Buying and holding gold is the smartest strategy for long-term wealth, while trying to time the market is risky and often counterproductive. Historical data from over 56 years of gold trading proves that most of gold's long-term returns come from a few critical days each year. Missing these days by sitting on the sidelines or waiting for the perfect dip can drastically reduce your gains, sometimes bringing them down to near zero. Volatility is not the enemy. It is part of gold's growth engine. The ups and downs, the rapid swings, and even back-to-back highs and lows are all normal. What matters is that you remain invested consistently, so you are present for the days that generate the bulk of gold's performance. Timing the market may seem tempting, but it introduces unnecessary risk and reduces your ability to benefit from the most important days of the year. Remember, over decades, the top 2 days of gold each year account for nearly all its annual return. You cannot predict them. They may come after a big loss, back-to-back with the worst day, or any time during the year. By staying invested through all volatility, you maximize your chance of capturing these key days and enjoying the power of compounding over time. If you want to grow wealth safely and effectively with gold and silver, the message is simple. Buy, hold, and remain patient. Avoid trying to chase dips or time the market. Let time work in your favor and trust the historical data. The market rewards patience, not guesswork. If you found this series helpful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, Gold Silver Scope, where we explore gold and silver strategies, market trends, and insights to help you make informed decisions. Stay tuned for more tips, analysis, and actionable guidance for your precious metals journey.